to a new episode of the Sustainable Living Podcast, Voices for Circular Change. For many years, circular economy was framed as an environmental discussion. But today, this conversation is changing. Circularity is increasingly becoming an economic, industrial, and even geopolitical issue. Questions around materials, packaging systems, resource efficiency, and industrial resilience are becoming central business questions. To explore these questions, I'm joined today by Rituraj Somani, CEO of GreenPack, to discuss how circular economy could become a key pillar of Europe's future competitiveness and what this transformation means for businesses, policymakers, and industries in Romania. Rituraj, welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks, Nicoletta.
I would like to begin with the bigger picture because the language around circular economy itself seems to be evolving. Why do you think is that?
There are multiple things which are happening in the world today. If you look at supply chains are fragile. Okay, the materials is almost like, let's say, sometimes very critical to the industry and the sustenance of the country and the continent. Okay. If you look at how we have developed the global supply chain over a period of time, which are very linear, you manufacture in a cheaper country and you bring them over to a country where the labor is more expensive. But with the geopolitical tensions, with different countries trying to use this for their own advantage, I think continents or at least Europe has started to realize that having material efficiency within the economy. So if they have a resource which is coming into the economy, if you can use it within the economy, it's a much smarter way of solving the challenges rather than purely continuously relying on the same supply chains, which are sometimes fragile. You can see it in the chips industry. You can see it in non-chip industry as well. You saw when COVID happened, the supply chains broke down. The prices skyrocketed. So at the end of the day, the consumers in the country pay for it. And that's why I think the governments are starting to realize this is a much more important topic. It's more a security topic rather than a circular economy topic purely.
In your view, is circular economy fundamentally about waste reduction or about retaining strategic value inside the economy?
I think it's retaining strategic value means period, because circularity about, pure for the reason of circularity is starting to shape into different discussion, because with the supply chains breaking down, again, I'll go back to that. It has to you have to keep the resources in the country or in the ecosystem which you are working in our case, EU. So that the economies are let's say we are always not reliant on a cheaper resource country. Yeah. Now, if you go to the next stage, when we talk about Romania, on the contrary, I think for Romania it's even more essential than some of the other EU countries. Okay, because we generally import a lot in the country. Okay. So if you look at Romanian economy, it's is dependent on EU quite a bit. Okay, there's a lot of flow of trade back and forth. Okay, but at the end of the day, I think we have a net deficit always when it comes to the euro currency. Yeah, so we actually import a lot more than what we export today. So that's why I think for Romania, it's even more important than some of the EU countries actually.
Okay, then how should CEOs and investors rethink the concept of waste in this context of resource scarcity and industrial resilience?
I think they have to see it as a hedge for their own future in the risk in the environment of price volatility. Okay, means if you look at price of plastics today, it means it has gone up by 30-40% over the last 5 months or 4 months since the war in Iran started. Correct. The oil is scarcer resources. The oil prices have gone up. Similarly, plastic prices have gone up. Now, in such an environment, if you have recycled material, if it is done well, okay, from the start to finish, this becomes a hedge against the price volatility in the market. And if you look at all the CEOs, they are all looking to ensure that prices of the products are stable, okay, so that the business can continue. So I would say that it's something which is uh, a requirement today from a resource sufficiency perspective than rather purely a nice to have circularity slide in your presentations.
So, could circularity become one of Europe's competitive advantages in the next decade?
First, I think Europe is ahead of other countries in the world. That's something I think kudos to the work which has been done by a lot of people and a lot of countries in the past. Having said that, I think there is still a long way to go. Okay, so so given that we cheap labor will never become our advantage, not in the next 20 years, I think. So I think the most important thing is if we can design material, okay, which we can move in the same ecosystem, okay, within the continent, then you do not have to pay for the same thing multiple times, okay, as a continent. So I think, and that's what Europe has realized. And but the thing is, the discussion is a lot difficult than the simplistic answer I can give at the moment, because you have to design for circularity, the material. Means if you look at what we send to landfill, actually, the material we send to landfill, okay, is nothing but a molecule designed incorrectly at a wrong point in time, and it's in the wrong place. Okay. So ideally, we can have, if we design it right, and we can continue to move the material in the ecosystem, then we are not paying as a society multiple times for the same material which we use, and we use a lot.
Correct, correct. How important is packaging and waste infrastructure for Europe's long-term industrial resilience?
We are, I mean, GreenPack, we are one of the largest packaging waste collectors in the market today, and also one of the largest EPR companies on packaging waste. If you look at let's say resource recovery in Romania, which still lags behind entire Europe. Okay. Secondly, our landfill rates are one of the highest in Europe. Okay. There have been times in the past that Romanian landfills are probably I think not recycle more than 10% of whatever we use in Romania. Even with all the effort we are doing on DRS, on companies like us who are trying to collect and supply it back to the recyclers. Okay. But the separate infrastructure for collection is not as advanced as in some of the other parts of Europe. We have to go back into circularity to 40 to 50%, which means there's a lot of headroom to work towards. So it is fundamental for us to, let's use an example to make it more simpler. Yeah? If you get let's say my wife shops a lot, so you get these boxes with cardboard, and that cardboard box can either end up in the landfill or can actually end up with the recycler. I think if it ends up with the recycler, it remains in the ecosystem at the end of the day. So that's what we need to promote a lot more than what we are doing it today. And there are multiple layers in this ecosystem which needs to be set right in Romania, at least, okay, for it to function at least at a level of countries like Netherlands, Sweden, and other countries with separate collection infrastructure, education of the population, okay, around that. I think we have done very good education with DRS because we are one of the best in Europe. So I think there is a lot which we can do actually as a country, and we have proven it to ourselves. So I think it's something which we should continue to work towards, but also we need to have a lot higher landfill taxes than what we have today, which will help the circular economy on the other side.
The industry itself seems to be transforming from waste management toward resource intelligence and material optimization. How do you see this evolution?
I think it's a very good point you touched upon, because resource intelligence actually helps recycling much better. Mm-hmm. And I'll explain with a bit of an example of textile. You can use textile as an example. So there is very little textile which we use today, which is monomaterial. Yeah. if you do not know what is in the textile, you do not know how to recycle it. Okay, that means on textile side today, recycling solutions are anyways quite limited. However, if you know within the material what is inside, your ability to recycle it goes up. So things like digital product passports will help us understand from the start what is inside the material. Okay. Second important thing is we need to understand how we are designing a material so that it continues in the recycling chain much better. And I use this example quite a lot. If you have transparent PET, because we all drink, let's say, water from the bottles, a transparent PET is much easier to do pet-to-pet recycling, because if you do add color PET, then you have to go through a sorting station. Okay, so you add a step in the process. Okay, so as much as possible, if we can move towards materials which we can be easier recycled, and we know what is inside the material, then it becomes easier for the recyclers, and their cost of recycling goes down as a society. And since the cost of recycling will go down, the people will choose to recycle because the recycling material will be cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why knowing what is inside is fundamental to the equation. I think you also touched upon AI. Okay, I would say AI is on a nascent phase still. Okay, AI is not mainstream today. It has a potential, and it will, I think, become mainstream in the times to come. Probably we are talking about next 5 years. So we are all learning around that. Okay. I have not seen massive large-scale AI use cases yet implemented. There are AI use cases implemented on sorting. There are AI use cases implemented on something, but this is not like a mainstream today in the industry. Okay. But I think in the next 5 years, we are going to see some dramatic transformation, which will include some displacement, but at the same time will include some newer creations which will come through. And things will be looking very different than today. This is what I can tell you. I cannot tell you what it will look like.
True. Do companies truly understand the financial value hidden inside their waste streams?
I would say some yes, some no. Okay, so it's not to say that everybody does, but a lot of people are getting more and more educated around it. Okay, the European targets around ensuring that there is a recycled material in all the material we produce has helped, because then it forces education. Uh, you know, I always say this to everybody whom I meet is it is not important how much you know about being healthy. It's about what you do with it, correct? So do you go to the gym regularly? Do you eat healthy food? If I know all the theory, but sometimes I indulge still, correct? So the most important thing is we need to start putting things into practice, which I think the European regulation has helped the entire European industries. Now, if you were to look at WTO with the free trade agreements and all of that, if you have to still comply with all of them and still protect Europe, I think recycling is one of the answers. Okay, it's not the only answer, but it's definitely one of the answers. I would say
which sectors do you believe are still massively underestimating circularity risks and opportunity?
I think textile is one of them. Because I would say that the kind of way we use textile today, and the growth of fast fashion has and the growth of usage of textile, and how fast you throw away the textile. Okay, versus if you look at 25 years ago, it has changed completely. Okay, so that is definitely one of them which comes on top of my mind. I think on the critical material side, we are getting there in Europe, but I think still early stages, especially when it comes to battery materials and others. So you would see that these things will improve, but some of the industries they are still trying to figure out the solutions, and sometimes the solution exists, but they are just widely apart, not known. Okay, so we might be doing some great things in Sweden, which people in Romania might not know. So education is also very important. Well, when it comes to transfer of knowledge.
Regulation is increasingly shaping market behavior. EPR, extended producer responsibility, and the new packaging regulations are beginning to change the way companies think about products and packaging design. Do you think many companies still underestimate the scale of this transition?
I think the bigger companies know. Okay, obviously there is, but the bigger companies are not the only producers in the market and not the only people in the market. And actually, if you look at the overall market ecosystem, the fragmented small players, there are a lot more than when you look at the bigger players. So I think there is level of understanding, which I would say is different in different ecosystems and different countries around EPR. Okay. Though on certain sectors, like in case of packaging waste, EPR is much more understood. Okay. But for example, in textile, we are still in the very nascent stages of it. So different materials have different level of understanding of EPR in the current journey. Yeah. So that's why I think it's going to be quite an interesting, let's say, challenge for us to go towards. But if you look at, let's say, DRS, how DRS came by, okay, in Romania, and have become one of the things which has fundamentally shaped the PET flows in the country, correct? Because we are not moving from making a good PET dirty and then cleaning it and then making it most likely sometimes downcycling it. Actually, you're moving from a PET to PET recycling, okay, which is used in the same loop. Okay, so basically you use the same bottle again and again, technically, through a simple process. So with that you actually reduce the reliance on buying PET from the outside of the country. Okay, so the EPR systems does fundamentally shape it up. Okay, there is a level of understanding which has gone up in the last 10 years for different material streams, but there is a lot to be done.
Mm-hmm. Are we moving toward a future where packaging design decisions will be judged not only aesthetically or commercially, but also based on circular performance?
Uh, I would say it is increasingly true. That's, I think, the right way to put it. But it is not like 100% of the design decisions will be based on that in the next 5 years. I cannot put it like that, to be honest. It's increasingly more true because as the cost of doing business rises, okay, cost of transportation is rising.
Mm-hmm.
So people are, even the design decisions are improving, okay, but it's not to say that, in 5 years, all the design decisions will be based on that. No, there's a scope for marketing which will still stay. There's a scope of creative people which will still stay. And sometimes, having worked in the industry for multiple times, I don't think creative people are generally focused on recycling. Okay, so there is a level of knowledge which will go up. Also, I think uh, there's an opportunity for us as a ecosystem to understand this concept of recycling much earlier while you're getting educated. Like if you're becoming a designer, you get educated around eco design and concepts like that, so that actually when you come into the mainstream, you are thinking like that. So it goes back into education quite a bit, actually, a sustainable economy and a country or an ecosystem, rather than purely on certain fundamental decisions being pushed by the government and people learning it because there's a law.
How do you see eco-modulations fees and circularity-linked financial incentives changing corporate behavior?
Means, in some countries, eco-modulation has set a pace. Countries like France, Belgium, Netherlands, these are the countries which I think about. For Romania and Eastern Europe, there is still some work to do. Okay, there is means the if you look at EPR driven governance, okay, it typically goes through the CFO in the country, in the company, because it is linked to, the strategic conversation around cost and other things. Okay. Um, there is a lot more which needs to happen. Okay. Um, from an education perspective, I would think. Okay. And that's where you would start to make the ecosystem itself circular much more. So if you go back into countries like Netherlands, because I lived in the Netherlands and I have some example to it, the discussion around resource recovery, recycling starts at an age of 4 or 5 year old when you go to the school. Okay, so that's much more embedded in the system and the society, and then you see separate waste collection regularly. Kids are taken to a sorting plant or a recycling plant and all of that, because I've seen this with my son going there. So the concept is embedded. Okay, I this is happening more and more in Romania, but I cannot say that this is a mainstream in every setup of Romania, because Romania is also not one Romania. Okay,
Correct. Yeah.
Romania has multiple Romanias inside it. Being here for 7 years, I understand it now a little bit more.
Now, bringing the discussion closer to our region, in Romania, we still tend to discuss recycling operationally rather than strategically. What do you think is missing from the conversation? Now,
I think it's an interesting one. Without trying to say what we are doing good or bad, I think it's a journey. Okay. So one thing I think we can be proud in Romania is that we are just a 35-year-old democracy. Okay. And we have come a long way from where we were. So I think we can be very proud of that as a country. And we are trying to compete with countries which have been democracy and for over 400 years, 200 years, 300 years, right? So we can beat ourselves that we are not doing well, okay? But I generally see it as a much positive sign that, okay, we have come through into a democratic phase. We are learning how to be a democratic country, which also has its learning process, okay? The same is true for India, to be honest. Okay, India has a learning process as well. So you see some of the smaller countries and like I will use Netherlands because I've lived in 3, 4 different countries. So Netherlands is a much smaller country, densely populated, easier to manage and do things. Romania, a much larger country, let's say more sparsely populated with similar population but much larger. So the similar ecosystem what we build in Netherlands does not necessarily function in Romania in the same way because the distances are just longer. Okay. India is a very different beast because it's like multiple countries in a country. Okay. So that's why I think this the discussion is evolving. Okay. We have to learn and we have to be open to change. And the responsibility which rests on our legislators is to let's legislate in a way that it is catching up with speed. Okay. So that's the most important thing, and allow capital to flow in the country much easier than what it currently does for the ecosystems to be built. Okay, on a certain segments, because that's one of the challenges which Romania has quite a bit actually. The capital flow is not as fluid as some of the other countries. The cost of capital is pretty high in the country. Our debt to GDP ratio does not really help today to bring the cost of capital down. So, and that education to the society that these are important aspects are important because today, if you look at the voting, is based on who gives us maximum benefit rather than who builds a better country. So that's the shift we need to achieve. But again, we are a young democracy. I think we have done quite a bit. You have seen living standards going up in Romania at a very drastic pace. So there's a lot of good which has happened, and I think we just need to remember that we need to continue on that.
technology is increasingly becoming part of the circular economy conversation with AI, with digital product passports, and material intelligence entering the discussion. Could digitalization become the missing layer that finally makes large-scale circularity economy viable?
I think it will be one of the pieces. It cannot be done without it. Okay, that's absolutely true. Because digital product passports, if you look at DRS as well, it's a technology layer on it. Okay, there are different components which you will see in circular economy, but technology will definitely remain a very important component of it. And that will allow us to become smarter uh, within the circular economy ecosystem eventually. Means you will always have transportation, you will always have recycling technology itself, okay? But the digital layer will touch every set of ecosystem because transport has to become more efficient. The recycling needs to know what materials are inside. The machinery will become more technology oriented in the future, correct? Because we are already talking about potentially robots coming into play, okay, in a lot of real life scenarios. So technology will play a very important role in every ecosystem, and the challenge is how do we as a country adopt to the technology, and once we are adapting and we are adapting at a faster pace and creating newer technology as well.
Before we conclude, I would like to leave our audience with a broader reflection. So if you look 10 years ahead, what do you think will be the biggest mindset shift that companies and policymakers need to make if they want to remain relevant in a truly circular economy?
I think the biggest mindset shift is, which I always say, is I was a bit of a perfectionist in my life. If I look back in time, and I can only say, speed and iteration will trump perfection. Okay, so they need to operate at speed, make some decisions, not try to make perfect decisions. We will have some challenges, okay, and iterate those decisions, okay, so that we get to perfection faster, which will also continue to move. Perfection will continue to move as well, correct? But that's what I would say will make the biggest difference actually, because sometimes we just get stuck on a discussion which we can actually finalize, move, and correct it as we are going along. So I always say iteration is the mother of all learnings.